be a walk down memory lane for some of you. Perhaps it will be somewhat informative for some of you. We want to look at it from a lot of different angles. To begin, for the ceremony, I have composed a bit of a poem to get us off on the right foot. From the Bournes to the Van Buskirks, Mashpees paddling canoes, to stand-up paddle boarding women and couples on a pontoon cruise. These pretty waters run pretty deep, much deeper than your line can reach. Long-lost legends, sunken secrets, a stone's throw from that sandy beach. Forgot footprints in shallow water's shade, where them snapping turtles wade. In the old days, around the edges, lush with fauna, fish, and fawn, wildlife outnumbered the hunters, about 10,000 to 1. When the Reverend Richard Bourne met with the natives long been here, he taught them prayers with naive promises that faith meant nothing more to fear. When he made good on land treaty, they passed to him a 5-acre piece, the neck of this pond, tranquil and famed for finding eggs from mother geese. The land changed hands a few times over. Nothing to note much came of it until the 1917 purchase by ranchers called Kunameset. For each field, they'd need a leader, an overseer of the work. Hired for here a Nova Scotian by name of Ernest Van Buskirk. And he moved in with his lady, little Billy and Viola. This was back when for a nickel you could buy a Coca-Cola. Back when few could well afford the cost of Ford Model T cars, and even fewer thought to escape to a quiet night under the stars. Desperate times in early 30s, poor old Ernest passed away, and amid mass unemployment, most were living day to day. Ernest's widow, wise Elizabeth, saw potential in the plight, renting boats and lots to fishermen, anxious for big trout to bite. They'd arrive in early April, drive from Boston the night before, ice on tips of poles pre-dawn, shivering along the rocky shore. In her boats they went out deeper, where the bigger dinners found. Then they'd gather around the fire, with bedrolls unfurled on ground. In the summer they'd return, hauling whole families along, trying a weekend at a time to feel all right in a world gone wrong. Elizabeth, she did things her way. She was firm, but she was fair. Still in 1949, this land was passed to a new pair. Grown Viola, married to Andrew, a master trainer son-in-law. And the place, born as Van Buskirks, transformed into Camp de Gras. Andy Jr., daughter Ann, and their families took the reins, sold to Morgan, then Sun Outdoors, but still their legacy remains. It's not the managers, but all the visitors give the campfires here their spark. Call it a resort or a retreat. Locals still say Peters Pond Park. Generations, grown on apples from these trees, swimming, fishing, no rain wishing, lovers lane midnight a-kissing, dancing to DJs and guitars under the same sparkling stars that will still light the sky when their children try to bottle lightning by and by. I've seen old men close their eyes, lift their chin to meet the breeze, smiling wistful as it brought them precious misplaced memories. The surface shimmers, same as always, in the daybreak bright of dawn, clinks of cheers and kids a playing, the latest wildlife around the pond. Fresh new footprints, shifting sands, just a stone's throw from that shade, beneath the trees by shallow waters, where still them snapping turtles wade. May long go on, dear Peter's Pond, and the campground along its shores, a simple slice of paradise that once was theirs, for now is yours. Thank you. Let's go way back. 18,000 years ago. Who can guess what was going on 18,000 years ago here in Cape Cod? Right, so about 18,000 years ago, the kettle ponds and the spring-fed ponds were forming here in Cape Cod. That's about how long it's been for Peter's Pond here in this spot. Now, who can guess what started happening in Cape Cod area about 12,000 years ago? About 12,000 years ago, the first Algonquin Wampanoag persons started to settle in Cape Cod, around the bodies of water. So, for a little more than 10,000 years, there have probably been people, little kids and whatnot, playing in this pond, fishing in this pond. It's kind of neat to think back on, to think about how time is and how long this place has kind of been here. And then we get into the items that we talked about here with this campground here for 90 years. And in some ways it seems it's changed so much. I know is sometimes the feeling of people who've been here a long time, but in some ways the fundamental reasons that people are coming here remain exactly the same things you see day to day. You see a child learning to swim in the pond. You see a young person learning to fish in the pond. You see them making their dinner. You see the families gathered around. You see these same fundamental, consistent things continuing to go on as new chapters of this story, which I think is really great and interesting. So I just wanted to share that. And I wanted to ask, before we invite our special guest of the evening, if anyone who's here as a seasonal would like to share any of their stories of memories in the park or anything like that. No, we came to listen. That's all right. That's just fine. Well, last year I was here, and it was busy summertime, and I didn't know much what to expect, and then all of a sudden somebody tells me that Anne is standing at the front desk, and I did not know even who she was, and we met then, and it struck me, wow, isn't that fantastic that she comes back here and sees the park and visits and whatnot. And that's when I really started to kind of look into the history of the place. Over the course of the winter, I went down to the library, and I found that Barbara, Andy's wife, had done some research during the 50th anniversary, which we have a newspaper article from here in 1982. You're up there, Ann. And talking about the 50th anniversary, and she traced back some of the things which helped me out in my kind of research of the place. And so I started thinking then, Ann's coming back, I see the reservation, let's see if we can make something work. And she was kind enough and gracious enough to indulge me and to join us here this evening. And so Ann, if you would not mind coming up and speaking a little bit about your time in the park and your role here in the park, I would love that. Please give a round of applause to Ann Swing.
To use a microphone. Is that close enough?
That's close enough.
I grew up upstairs in the east window. The only time the wind blew was when there was a thunder and lightning storm. So no air conditioning, it was hot. And we started actually coming to Peter's Pond when my grandma was here. We came every summer for family outings, and she had kids camping then that were about our ages. So we would want to come and just play down at the beach and do the things that kids do. I come back now because I love the park. It's part of my life and who I am. I know there are changes, but life changes. My mom started out with tents. There was no electricity, and there were no toilets either. There were outhouses, and there were pumps. And bring your water because you have to, what's the word? You have to prime the pump. So that's how camping was in those days. And camp equipment evolved. So with the evolution of camp equipment, the park evolved. When it was tents, you could have little tiny sites. And she had, I don't know, somewhere between 400 and 500 sites. So it was a big park then too. But as the equipment got bigger and bigger and bigger, stuff has to change. I choose to come to the park because if I went to a motel or stayed at the Daniel Webster, it wouldn't be any fun. I can come to the park and sit and see people whom I know and just enjoy the activity, which is much better than sitting in a motel or a hotel. So I come back every year that I can and enjoy the park and enjoy seeing some of the changes. And some you go, ah, but others are great. So that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Ann. We do have a cake and we have snacks, which everyone's more than welcome to as we have the band. And I did want to point out some things on here and just get some accuracy because I sometimes make mistakes. But there are some pictures up here that I had found that I thought would be interesting for people to see. At the top we have Ernest Van Buskirk. You may recall him from the poem as the gentleman that was here working when it was a Coonamessett Ranch property. And then his wife, Elizabeth Van Buskirk. These would be Ann's grandparents. Then I have a photo here that Charlie Heger gave me that is Elizabeth Van Buskirk. This was from a sandwich history book. Elizabeth in the carriage with Viola, I believe, and Billy as the children with her.
There were 8 kids in all.
8 kids, okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that's Viola.
All of them are there.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. My grandmother was a big proponent of education. And she got married at 16. She was an immigrant from Prince Edward Island. My grandfather came from Nova Scotia. So they were wash ashores to Cape Cod, to Massachusetts. And my grandmother was kind of a women's suffrage person. When she couldn't get the school bus, she decided she would, and they said, don't let that foreigner ruin your town or run your town. My grandmother became a quick citizen. And because she wanted the school bus so that her kids could go to high school, they went to a little tiny grade school in South Sandwich, and then it was time for them to go to high school, and they had no transportation except for the horse and carriage. And my grandmother would go to the library to make sure that the kids had books to read. That was important. It was important that they know about local politics, state politics, and federal politics. So they could have answered questions that these kids today have no clue about. Because that's just, she felt that that was important, that you have to be a participant in your local politics and know what's going on in your area. And she was very aware. No electricity in the farmhouse till 1950. In 1950, so there couldn't have been sites with electricity.
Right.
1950, they finally decided there were enough inhabitants in South Sandwich that they could put electricity in. So that's the first electricity. My grandmother never had electric, water, or sewer. So she had an outhouse, and air conditioning is new. And as we all know, summers can be hot and humid on Cape Cod. So things have changed. And the other picture is my mom's wedding.
Right, so then we have the marriage of Viola and Andy DeGraw and the families there. I believe, Ann, this is the one I'm questioning about. Is that Andy DeGraw Sr., your father, on the horse? Far right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that is.
It's the left.
He's the left.
Yes.
Okay. And then we have the article from 1982 when they interviewed Ann and Andy and Barbara and talked about the history of the park. So all of that is there. I'd be more than happy to provide copies of this later on to anyone. I could send them out digitally, things of that nature. Otherwise,
Across the lake where the sand pit is used to be a fantastic train stop. And in the old days, South Sandwich was a train stop. People came from Boston area and other parts too to Peters Pond to stay on the pond for the summer. And where my parents got married, that was another bus or train stop, and they came by carriage out to South Sandwich to the woods because it was not too developed in those days, nor when I moved here was it developed. I had a class of 9. So, I guess that's how they went to school too. It's either on Horse or by Shanksmere. And mostly Shanksmere.
Is that the wing school?
No, they went to school behind the town hall. It was called on Academy Hill.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where they went to school. The high school was, my uncle, 2 years younger than my mother, I think was the first class at the wing school. And I graduated from the wing school when it was grades 1 through 6 on the first floor, and grades 7 and 8 in 2 classrooms, and 9 through 12 in the rest of the upstairs. And we walked upstairs to the basement for lunch, or PE or whatever. There were stairs, and that's just what we did.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have the band start in a moment. Priscilla, who put this all together for us, thank you, Priscilla, is going to cut the cake, and we're gonna pass out pieces of the cake for you. There's beverages as well and things like that. I thought it would be nice, Priscilla, if we did a group picture with Ann. If everybody would like to join me in a photo, maybe everyone could come forward to these benches or something like that, and we could take a nice picture with Ann while Priscilla begins the cake. Right. That would be great. We could sit and we could stand behind it. Does that work for you? Okay. Would you like to do that? Would you like to take a picture to commemorate the occasion? Would you mind, Ann? Okay, that's great. All right, great. Thank you.